Welcome, everyone, to the 30-minute Midas touch from beautiful Dyersburg, Tennessee at the Herb Welsh WrestlePlex. Now, here is, pound for pound and inch for inch, the best of the best in professional wrestling today. A wrestling genius worth his weight in gold. The Golden Boy, Greg Anthony.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 30-minute Midas touch. I am your host, the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Chick Magnet, Mark Tipton.
Thank you for the moniker again this week. And, that for me would be an ironic nickname, like calling the 6'8", 300-pound guy tiny. I certainly don't fit the moniker Chick Magnet, but I do appreciate where you're going. This week I did catch the meaning behind the nickname I get for the week. This one, it was very clear, and because I appreciate kind of the history and lore of this, and you may feel this is a subject that I'm much more looking forward to than we have in the recent editions of the 30-Minute Midas Touch podcast, where we've dealt with Mad Dog Mark Tipton. Now we get the Chick Magnet, such as I am. But it is because we're going to deal with some comments this week made by a somewhat controversial, often outspoken, very talked about, and, among certain circles, popular professional wrestler who has returned to the fold after many years away. And that is the man, some know as Phil Brooks, but many of us know him as CM Punk, which was, of course, the beginning of Chick Magnet led us to CM Punk.
Right. So, but go over what he said.
Excuse me?
Go over what he said.
Oh, wait. I beg your pardon. I was so...
You were so enthralled with the Chick Magnet thing.
Oh, yeah. You threw me off. It got me off my game there. It is fair. This week he appeared on a podcast, an AEW-sponsored podcast called AEW Unrestricted. It is hosted by Tony Schiavone and referee Aubrey Edwards. They had a wide-ranging discussion, but there is a particular comment he made during that podcast that garnered a lot of attention around the wrestling world. And during that, he was discussing, wrestlers that he admired, looked up to, etc., and who he considered to be among the true greats of professional wrestling. And he made a point, and it was almost just said during the course of conversation. It didn't feel like he made a point to say it. It was worked in among some other names, but he said something that got a lot of people's attention. He said that in his opinion, Bret Hart was greater than Shawn Michaels.
Yeah. And this falls into the wrestling is like ice cream category. There's vanilla, there's chocolate, there's strawberry, there's all these different flavors of ice cream, but it's all ice cream. And the problem we're running into today in professional wrestling is that they're really not trying to give us ice cream. They're trying to give us sushi. And as much as I like sushi, if I'm in the mood for ice cream, I don't want sushi, right? So I think, like we've talked about many, many times before, is we've gotten so far away from professional wrestling that that it's hard to get back, and that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm sorry, I watched the Lucha Brothers versus the Acclaimed earlier from Rampage, and there wasn't. I don't know if there was a single fucking tag in the entire tag match, and that frustrates me to no end. So, but back to what CM Punk said. CM Punk, he said that Bret's stuff holds up better than Shawn's and things like that. So to me, it's an ice cream thing. Like, for me personally, I think Shawn Michaels is better. Just because his longevity and the stuff that he had after 2002 was pretty amazing too. And the fact that he did that when a lot of people considered him not to be in his prime. That was after the fact. I think Shawn Michaels' entire career was prime, by the way.
Okay.
But there's a handful of guys that if you say is the greatest of all time, I'm not going to argue with you. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels are two of those guys. Like, I'm not going to... You can say him, them, Hogan, Flair, Terry Funk, Jack Briscoe, Harley Race. There's so many guys you can name, but there's a handful of guys if you say it. Now, if you said like Johnny K9 was the greatest wrestler of all
No.
time, then I would say probably not.
Yeah,
But
I don't know that there are many that would make that, but I would have to say you've got me rocking this week. I'm stuttering and stammering here. I was fully prepared walking in here for you to support CM Punk's position on this and go with the Bret Hart side of this argument, and you have hit me with a curveball here.
well, let me break something down too. We've all talked. I've talked about many times on the show. I've talked about shine, heat, comeback, finish, right? And my thought process on a professional wrestler's comeback, that it needs to be, boom, 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 boom. A big progression in their comeback. Shawn Michaels is the epitome of that. He probably has the best example of that kind of comeback. You understand? It always made sense. It always worked in, and he always, it always got a reaction. He did the same thing for years,
Right.
and did the thing. I mean, he would do the forearm for the double down.
Yep.
Then he would
Yep.
kip up,
Yep.
and then eventually it was atomic, clothesline, body slam, elbow off the top, set up for the kick, and then either we're going home there or we're going into some falsies. Great formula.
Sure.
It worked amazingly. And that's one of the things I always point to my students of this is how it needs to be. It needs to feel like this, Bret was unique in the fact that his comeback was not at all like that at all. His comeback was very, I would almost say methodical to a point to where it was like bump, pin, bump, pin. And he kept building, and it built, and he did well with it. But for me personally, I like the more, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, comebacks than I do Bret's style. Bret's style is very, very hard to get over if you're not Bret Hart.
Okay, well, okay, now you've taken me in a direction there. This is something that, as a member of the audience, gets me from time to time. For instance, you described Shawn during what he routinely did. He did frequently during his matches. After hitting the top rope elbow, to me that looked like a good place to go for a pin because hey, that's won a lot of matches for a lot of guys. Namely the Macho Man, won matches with that, and he would do it and then get up and go to the corner. And I was like, hey, you've got a guy down. You've just hit him with something. How do you feel about the kind of logic? Say, hey, this is a chance for me to go for a pin, as opposed to no, now I'm going to set up. And I guess this is where you say, does that break realism versus, the drama of building to what is his established finishing maneuver?
Very good question, Mark Tipton. So here's the basis of that, and I was just having this conversation earlier today as well. There's always been this thought process in professional wrestling. We always hear guys say, "Well, it's wrestling. The only way to win is to pin the guy, so you need to go for pins," and that's true. But there is a thing where you can go for too many pins and go for pins in the wrong times of the match, the incorrect times in the match. So there is a sweet spot in the middle of the number of times you can pin a guy. Because here's the thing. If I take 10 moves and he pins me after each move and I kick out, then all of his offense is for naught. You understand? But if he gives me this move and then that move and then this move and then another move and then he pins me, you understand? Then it's like, desperation, whatever, right? But it doesn't hurt his offense because he's obviously wearing me down to the point. And that's where another thing of, we always talk about 1-2 kick out. Well, I've seen matches with Regal and Fit Finlay where it was a half a count. Like the guy didn't even get a 1 yet and they kicked out. And then they got to 1, then they got to 1.3 and then, 2 and then 2.4. And see what I'm saying? Like they just gradually built up till finally we got a 3 count. That's another kind of an advanced approach to some of the psychology of professional wrestling. So with Shawn Michaels hitting the elbow, Shawn Michaels would hit the elbow, and at that moment, yeah, he could have went for a pin, but he knew that wasn't his best weapon so he would go for the knockout. Same thing. You're a football fan. Same thing with you may give it to your halfback or whatever to get it near the touchdown, but you're going to pass it to your wide receiver who's got 1,000 yards this season to
Right,
get
you're
that.
going to go to your star.
You're going to go to the star to get the actual thing. So it's kind of the same principle. Like, he can hit the elbow and maybe he can win or maybe not, but he knows when he hits that fucking kick, it's over. You know what I mean?
Okay, so it's, for instance, Jake not going for a pin after a short arm clothesline.
Exactly.
Okay. Do you feel that maybe going for those pins, and this is a subject that is, because, if you happen to have the misfortune of sitting next to me during a pro wrestling event, you will hear me yell to pin him frequently,
Right.
because that's part of the way I think about it. Do you think that seeing too many pins for a member of the audience kind of loses the effect of a pinfall?
Yeah, because like I said, if you see 50 pins and he kicks out of 50 of them, then what do they really even do? You know what I mean? Now there's always exceptions to the rule before anyone starts commenting or blasting us online. But I mean, there's always exceptions to the rule. But for the most part, you want to have that sweet spot in your pin count where you're not pinning too much, but you're still believably trying to win. That kind of thing. So it's a little bit of a it takes some experience to get that. Like it's something that I've really focused on the last 10 or so years of my career is getting the most out of everything I do. So I would get, in the beginning, I was heel obviously, but in the beginning I would pin and pin and pin because that was drilled into my head about pinning. Then it kind of dawned on me, and I actually heard some other people say the same thing I was saying about, well, if he kicks out 50 times, what does it matter? I was like, well, that's a good point. So let me build to each pin just like I build to each move anyway.
Okay. Do you feel it's something that perhaps you might do early in a match, go for a quick fall?
Yeah, if you're babyface, for instance, like if you're babyface and you're an underdog babyface versus a big giant heel, then yeah, schoolboy right there, 1, 2,
Yeah, kind of catch my nowhere with the inside cradle small package.
Yeah, that's
that kind of thing.
And that's what I'm saying. That's the exceptions to the rule. But just a basic meat and potatoes match, there's no reason to have a 2 count in the first minute. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there very rarely does that happen. So it's, even now, like if I'm babyface and I shoot a guy off and I take a big tackle and he pins me, I try to kick out at 1 right there in the beginning of the match.
Okay, well that logically makes sense.
Yeah.
And I have liked that when I've seen that in the past. Early on in the match, you should kick out. Now, obviously, you're still fresh. The match has just gotten going. And I do appreciate what you said because what you're describing is a building of drama. Because this is the thing. It is athleticism. It is athletic event, but it is also storytelling. And storytelling, you have a conflict and rising action. I'm going back to school here. And rising action leading to a climax and whatever of the action, and then the resolution, or something along that line. My teacher may regret that I don't know it better than that. But in any event, I suppose let me get back into really what his description of Bret Hart, and part of it was you mentioned the timelessness. But he went on in addition to that, which I do think is true. But one of the things that stuck out to me was he was kind of praising Bret Hart for his fundamentals, as far as his, I want to say footwork, and he was always in the right place and timing and all those things that a professional wrestler would notice that I may not.
Right.
He really praised Bret Hart on that, and that was part of his decision making and saying his appreciation for Bret Hart. How do you feel about that?
I mean, he's right on that aspect. I mean, the excellence of execution is a shoot. Like, it's legitimate. Like, he's that good. I mean, and like, I didn't realize this till much later in life. Of course, I always knew he was good, obviously, but I mean, until I got in the business and realized how good he was, because he was always in control of his body. You understand? And that's something I try to teach my guys, is always be in control of your body. And he would take, like, when he used to take the hard buckle to the chest, right? One of his, he took that bump quite a bit, but it always looked so devastating, but obviously he never got hurt with it. You know what I mean? So that means he was doing it correctly. And that's easy thing you could easily break a rib on if you're out of place or to the right or to the left or something like that. But he used to hit it perfectly and sell it accordingly. You know, I think, in my opinion, I think Punk is more coming from a place of he sees Bret with rose-colored glasses because he didn't get a chance to work Bret, but he
Right.
got a chance to work with Shawn, right? So like, yeah, I mean,
Oh, it's a meeting your heroes.
yeah, kind of like Bret's. I never got to. I don't know how good he is. He looks good. Well, I've worked Shawn. He's
Okay.
he's more humanized now. Does that make
could be
sense?
it. No, the rose-colored glasses just because of Bret Hart and his.
Oh, yeah.
That caught me funny. I wasn't laughing.
I
at
wasn't
you.
trying to. Yeah, I wasn't trying to.
When
do
you
that.
mentioned glasses and Bret Hart, that gets my attention. Well, I'd like to turn to Shawn Michaels a little bit here in your critique of him. As you described him, and you talked about how the effectiveness really, I'm schizophrenic on Shawn Michaels. And I'll explain it this way. Everyone knows about the approximately 4-year absence he had in the middle of his career. And the Shawn Michaels I saw in the first part of his career, although at his athletic peak, I think it's fair to say, that he was never a greater athlete than he was during that time period.
Right.
Versus the other are night and day. My appreciation for Shawn Michaels prior to his departure and my appreciation for Shawn Michaels after his return are night and day. I was not a Shawn Michaels fan.
Really?
At all, no.
Originally?
No. Prior to his departure. But it's remarkable the way I now consider him one of the best. I consider his match with The Undertaker at 25 to be, and I'm not alone in this, the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. I don't mind people referring to him as Mr. WrestleMania. I don't mind that at all. But where he won me over was in his return. And I'd like to let you talk about how your appreciation for his early career and maybe what I'm missing.
So I think it goes back to your and I's age difference slightly because when I came up when Shawn, I was a kid when Shawn Michaels was a rocker, right? And then as I started getting closer to, I think it was like 10, 11 years old, whatever it was, that's when he turned heel and he was the Heartbreak Kid. You know what I mean? That was cool to me. You know what I mean? And then when I was 16, 17, then all of a sudden he's D-Generation X. You know what I mean? Crotch chopping. So it's a little different for me because I kind of mirrored his rise to prominence. I thought Shawn Michaels, like in that 97, who could outperform that guy? You know what I mean? In 1997, there were so many great wrestlers and so many great things, but here we are. We got, him and Taker in those 3 matches between Bad Blood and Ground Zero and then the Rumble. You know what I mean? Like all those matches together. I actually sat down and made one of my kids watch that series of matches with me just so they could appreciate, the chemistry that those two had, and obviously came shining through on the WrestleMania 25 thing that you're talking about. So I was always a fan of Shawn Michaels as far as the work. Of course, we all know about his past and his headache to deal with, and he was a prick.
Okay.
Yeah, we all know that, okay? And he's openly admitted that for years, and that's fine. And then he was gone for 4 years, and there's some speculation that he may have fabricated that.
Yeah, there have been things like that. I think you, as you were talking, you hit upon. I can't argue with any of the points you said about his in-ring performance. I think part of it is oftentimes I have used the phrase before about separating the art from the artist. Sometimes I fail to do this.
O.J. Simpson.
That would be one. But you mentioned football earlier, and you went with O.J. Simpson there. I was going with Terrell Owens.
No, yeah.
Terrell Owens is an individual, tremendously talented athlete.
Yeah, one of the greatest receivers of all time, right?
By the numbers, yes. However, I cannot stand the man.
Right.
There was a controversy about him getting in the Hall of Fame, and if I had a vote, I would not vote to put him in.
Really?
I despise that.
Wow.
I think he's destroyed more than one team.
He played for the Niners at one point, right?
Yeah.
So I have to like him.
No, he destroyed them too.
Oh, come on, leave him alone.
He left them in a crater.
Oh.
But that's a side subject. I've gotten us off on the sidetrack. But one of those things is all those things you've stated about Shawn Michaels, particularly early in his career. The stuff where Vince says, I don't let anyone talk to me the way I allow Shawn to. His penchant for losing championships without putting over another talent. All those things I was not able to totally set aside.
Right.
And when I saw him return, I saw a very different professional wrestler.
Yeah.
Whereas I questioned his professionalism prior to his absence.
I think he really, this goes back to his found Christianity, and we've heard that story many times too. He came back with this renewed, he realized how much he actually loved professional wrestling. If he was going to make a living and make a better life for his family that he was growing with his wife at the time, then he needed to work, and that the best way to do that is to be a good performer and show up on time and do the best of your ability what's asked of you. There were certain situations where they wanted him to go to SmackDown, and he said no because that means I wouldn't be able to attend my church service.
Okay.
Which is, to me, that speaks volumes about someone's character. You know what I mean? They're willing to maybe lose their job or maybe
Well, it's something he placed as a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. But his return run, his 2002 run, was amazing. I mean, just the body of work that he had. I mean, every match he had, I don't think I saw a bad Shawn Michaels match in that time frame. You know what I mean? Like, I think I could point to something in the 90s maybe. Okay, I can point to something in the 90s. It was Kurt Hennig and Shawn Michaels that looked amazing on paper. Mm-hmm. But when they got out there, it was like,
yeah,
man, it just fell completely flat. It was like they weren't on the same page, maybe not even in the same book. It just didn't resonate. But I don't remember ever seeing that in the later years. I mean, I saw him work everybody: Chris Masters, Kane, Khali. I mean, he made it all work. You know what I mean? How's that? I mean, when you think about that, how's that even possible? And you talked about the WrestleMania match with Undertaker. Well, shit, every match he had was good. My least favorite one is the Jericho one, and that's amazing too.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I do want to say, for all my criticisms of his early career, the late run when he returned, just in the way he conducted himself and everything I saw him do, I was blown away. I was looking at the same guy. And I'm thankful I got, that he was able to return. Whatever you think about whether that was or was not career threatening or however people phrase it, I certainly appreciate and my opinion did a 180 on him. I do have a bit of as I watched the podcast, I had a thought cross my mind. Let you see if maybe this, sometimes business does play a role in the comments we make. We've said that before. In the early moments of the podcast, they brought up the fact that AEW has struck a deal with the family of Owen Hart. They're going to have an Owen tribute tournament of some sort, and so they've announced an alliance between the two. I've never viewed CM Punk as necessarily a company guy.
Right.
However, could it be that the relation, obviously he's mentioned that, he's gone all in, to pardon the pun, on AEW here. Mm-hmm. Maybe that could have colored his comments because Shawn Michaels is still employed by WWE, and hey, AEW's just struck this deal with Owen Hart. Could it be possible that's kind of a play that may have played a part in it?
Normally I would say yes, but Punk has gotten to the point to where he's so revered as a truth teller.
The voice of the voiceless.
Right. Not so much of that anymore.
No, he did say he's put that away.
Yeah. But the fact that he's just brutally honest about every aspect of anything he's ever asked, I just don't think he would, like you said, I don't think he would color it in that light if he didn't actually believe it. I am happy about the Owen Hart thing, just because I always kind of held a little resentment towards Martha Hart because she never allowed Owen to get his just due in WWE. And once you saw the Dark Side of the Ring episode where she explained the thought process and all the stuff that went into it and why he died and how much negligence it truly was, then you have a much better understanding for their family and their thought process on it. So for me, for Owen Hart to be a part of a national company again, even how do you say the word postmortem?
Postmortem.
Postmortem, yeah.
Or no, that's posthumously.
Posthumously,
That's a much better way to say it.
Yeah, posthumously, a part of a national wrestling company again, helps a lot of us wrestling fans, or maybe even create some new fans that never seen Bret Hart, seen Owen Hart before, and can go check him out.
All right. In the moments we have going, I think you've made your point pretty well on the Bret and Shawn situation, and it was interesting because you did hit me with a curveball. There was one other comment he made that stuck out, and I really hate that sometimes I find myself watching these things and I find myself doubting things that I hear said. I would like to assume that all these are true, but much as I'm somewhat conspiratorial minded. He stated, as they were describing his arrival in AEW, he mentioned that he did not actually sign an AEW contract until less than 2 hours before his appearance at the United Center. He implied that it was kind of a handshake deal, quote unquote, handshake deal that they had in place prior to his actual joining AEW. I found this to be rather incredible, and I was trying to decide it would, depending on the truth of this, would make me look at CM Punk and or Tony Khan in a very negative light. And I'll let you see if, based on what I said, what do you think about that comment?
Yeah, it completely shows the inexperience of Tony Khan to allow something like that to happen. I mean, here you are, you're running, currently the second biggest wrestling brand in the world, and you advertise a guy and you don't even have him locked in. You know what I mean? Like, even on situations where there's lots of money involved, there's contracts even on the independent level to make sure a guy shows up to a certain thing. So yes, we do a lot of handshake deals and things like that, but at the same time, if there's enough money involved, we're going to have it in writing, right? Obviously, there's going to be enough money involved in the CM Punk AEW relationship that, they definitely should have ironed all that out and had that done way before they even announced anything. It obviously should have been a done deal.
Well, what struck me is, and he referenced this in his comments, his arrival at AEW was among the worst kept secrets in professional wrestling,
Right.
and it was by design, in his opinion. He thought, hey, we should go on. These things often get out. We should go with it, let it go out, and sell tickets. Try to max it, because it is professional wrestling. It's about drawing money. And he said that, and that made perfect sense to me. But I thought, I was trying to decide if maybe this, and maybe it's because this is professional wrestling and there are Terry Bolleas in the world who say things that I find incredible. But I was finding myself, do I believe CM Punk? If I take him at his word, and it appears that you do, I try to think, well, maybe, there's some I'd say, well, maybe it makes a good story to say I didn't sign it till a half hour before. He said a half hour to 90 minutes. He didn't say exactly. But within 2 hours of his appearance at the United Center, to allow, and they mentioned, Tony Schiavone was on the podcast, mentioned how he kind of made the announcement about, hey, we're going to have, the first Rampage is going to take place at the United Center in Chicago, and we're going to call it First Dance. And he mentioned the crowd immediately broke into CM Punk chants because that was the expectation.
Right.
But if you're Tony Khan and you allow Tony Schiavone to go on stage and say something like that and get the reaction you've got, and you don't have CM Punk nailed down contractually, are you serious?
Yeah, like I said, it just really points to his inexperience. I mean, there's I can't remember any situation where that happened with Vince McMahon and whoever, right? So yeah, I mean, obviously, and like you said, it may be one of those things where, oh, it was a good story. I didn't sign till 90 minutes. But here's the thing, too. Like, if that's true, then that means CM Punk really didn't have time to read it either.
No.
Right? So, I mean,
I don't know. I suppose maybe a copy could have been sent to a lawyer for
yeah,
review
maybe.
or something.
And then he.
but not officially signed.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
But even then,
you still, yeah.
no, this is big. This is big money. This is network television. There's too much tied up in this to leave that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe this just, hey, I'm a guy in the front row. What do I know about running major businesses? But that struck me as odd. Real quickly, if I could, he said a number of things that won me over, of course, and we'll try to slip them in. I think we have a minute or two left, I believe. He mentioned some of the people that he appreciated. He mentioned people like Raven took him aside as he was coming along, and we've talked about trying to slow people down. He mentioned Ricky Steamboat. And one that struck out is he mentioned, just in passing very quickly, he mentioned Tracy Smothers. I appreciated that a great deal. Even just a quick comment making that in. But he was describing his match with Powerhouse Hobbs, one of the young members of the roster there. Mm-hmm. And this is where Steamboat came up. He mentioned how during that match, he hoped some of the guys in the back would see, because the bulk of the match was Powerhouse Hobbs dominating the match and CM Punk selling on the ground. Yeah. And he said he hoped that some of the guys in the back would see that and understand the value of selling and go out there and sell your butt off. Did you appreciate that comment? And I'm going to guess that you don't think that message got through.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the comment, because that's kind of the same things we're always talking about on here. And it's good to have someone of his stature reiterate that. But like you said, I don't think it rang through at all. I don't think that they even think about wrestling in that cerebral of a sense. You understand? Like, how can I get this over? What can I make the audience feel if I do this or I do that? They're just looking at the wow factor. Like, oh, I can do a kick. Well, I can do a kick with 3 spins. You know what I mean? Like, okay, yeah. There's no, like Cornette says, there's 3 reactions in wrestling: yay, boo, and wow. Wow doesn't make you any money. It's good to have every once in a while, but boo and yay are where it is. If they love you or they hate you. You know what I mean? He made Powerhouse Hobbs hated in that match because he was the underdog babyface getting his ass handed to him for an extended period of time. And then eventually he won. He overcome the odds, like many great movies we see. So, yeah, it's completely asinine to me that people would ignore certain facts about professional wrestling. And like I said, they're just changing stuff to change stuff. They're reinventing the wheel when this stuff was already polished out for us. And, they handed us a blueprint on how this should be done. And then people go, nah, let's try it this way. And I just don't agree with that thought process at all.
All right. I believe we're running a little bit over time.
We are over time. We're at almost 33 minutes. But for myself, the Golden Boy Greg Anthony, and my co-host, Chick Magnet, Mark Tipton, thank you and goodbye.